This video shows you how to build acoustic panels and how to make your room sound better. An acoustic panel frame consists of both the long and the short side, of varying lengths bespoke to your requirements. So measure up your wall or the area where you're going to install the acoustic panel and cut to size. The pine woods have been cut bespoke to my requirements at the local store. Materials I would be needing to build the panels are pine wood, D-rings, eye hooks, plugs, hanging wire, Stanley knife, backing fabric or burlap, L-shaped metal brackets or corner braces, Rockwool insulation, Kallax or trinket shelf, acoustic foam which is optional, drill, hammer, staple gun, glue, quality acoustic fabric or chip-up bedsheet alternatives, pressing iron, pliers, masking and measuring tape, as well as Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, and this is the backing fabric here. In fabricating them 7 panels, the first step would be to measure up the pine woods. So 1 to 20 feet, 6 pieces on the short side. The other short side piece is about 25 feet, 6 off, or a quantity of 6. On the long side, the pine is about 42.5 feet and it's about 3 off for a quantity of 3. And the subsequent long side is about 48 feet with a quantity of 6 or 6 off. If you require just one acoustic panel, you just need 2 long sides and 2 short sides, okay? I actually need this loads of quantities because I'm aiming to build anywhere between 6 to 7 panels. So first, take out about 7 sheets of Rockwool from its packaging. Sandpaper both edges of both the long and the short pine. Hold the long side over the short side on the outside and pilot drill through the equidistant center of both the long and the short-sided plank or wood. Use a pilot drill bit whose diameter is slightly smaller than the diameter of the 2-inch screw. So here I will select a 3mm wood bit whose diameter or profile is slightly lesser than the screw. You can see that the thread profile of the screw protrudes from the wood bit, and as such the wood bit would be a good fit for piloting. Repeat and reproduce the process. Pilot all 4 corners of the acoustic frame. After piloting, apply a small drop of Gorilla Glue between the long and the short side and piloted hole. You can also spread the glue if you want and then subsequently screw in the 2-inch screw through the long and the short side. Vary the speed of your drill to a slower speed, which is switch 1. Switch 2 is for drilling, to prevent your drill from going further through the flush profile. And that's pretty much all of your acoustic panels, long and short sides, coupled together. The next step would be to install 4 corner brackets on all 4 corner sides of the frame. Pilot drill the holes before you screw down the holes in the respective corners. When pilot drilling, you can also place a tape around the drill bit so that you do not drill past the length of the screw when drilling through the wood. So just like I've done here, put some masking tape up until about 3/4 or half of the screw so that when pilot drilling, you don't pilot through the wood onto the other side. And so pretty much the masking tape serves as a gauge, so that you know when to stop drilling through the wood. After piloting, repeat and reproduce the process by screwing down all brackets, okay? The next step of the process would be to cut, through the backing fabric around the perimeter of the frame that has been fabricated or built. Stretch out the backing fabric and using a staple gun, begin to staple from the center outwardly on all 4 sides of the frame. Make sure that you stretch out the backing fabric and that the backing fabric isn't sagging. And also, right before you even begin stapling, you can apply Gorilla Glue around the perimeter of the pine wood before you start stapling to provide reinforcement. And if you've missed it, you can still apply the glue in between spaces between stapled bits. Use your scissors to trim any excess backing fabric that protrudes from the frame of the pine wood frame. And this is what I mean here. Apply glue between, them stapled bits. Okay, it's not absolutely necessary step. Just provides reinforcement. But if you need to, if you've missed it, prior to stapling the backing fabric, you can also do it, after you've stapled. But preferably do it before you staple if you need to apply them glue. And then subsequently hammer down any stapled bits that still protruding. Just make sure that it's flush against the frame of the wood and the barking fabric. Clean out your work area and prep, the front fabric as well as your Rockwool insulation slab. Place the Rockwool sheet in the assembled backing sheet frame. Cut some flexible Rockwool and fill gaps in the frame if required. Repeat and reproduce the process for other panels, and as you can see, I have applied the glue before stapling down. Utilize hand gloves and a face mask when dealing with Rockwool. Ensure that your work area is well ventilated, and cover exposed skin when working in an unventilated area. At this stage, we're pretty much repeating and reproducing the process for the other panels, and filling up the gaps where we haven't got enough Rockwool within the frame and the backing. And this is what I mean here. If the Rockwool extends more than the frame, get a standing knife and cut out the excess. And if the Rockwool doesn't fit in properly into the frame, you can always patch up the deficit gap with chunks of Rockwool. So now that you get the hang of it, I'm going to repeat and reproduce the process for the rest of them panels, which I'm not going to be showing every single panel here, but you get the idea, don't you? If you haven't got enough pine wood, you could utilize canvases or picture frames. Just install your Rockwool onto the base of the backing fabric that's been stapled onto the frame. At a later stage in the video, I would be installing this quality acoustic front fabric cloth panel, which are more expensive than your traditional conventional bed sheets, which I am installing here. To install the front cover on the backing and the frame, lay your front cover down, turn the backing and the frame that has got the Rockwool in it upside down so that it faces the front cover, or the breathable bedsheet cover, which is what I'm trimming down. Okay, if your breathable front fabric material is quite light, you can double up on the sides before you staple down. But if it's thick, just staple all the way through. You don't need to apply glue at this stage. Okay. And when using bed sheets or cover sheets, you want a material that breathes. So breathe some air through your material, and if you could feel the air on the other side of the bed sheet, then it is a good material to use for fabricating your acoustic panel. You don't need to double down on your bed sheets. I'm only doubling down here because this material is very light, so that the staple doesn't come off readily easily, but it's still breathable and it's fine. Okay, so I've repeated and reproduced the process for other panels, trimmed them accordingly, and these are all them panels that have been built. The next step of the process would be to install the D-rings and the hanging wire at the back of the panel. That's the hanging wire and D-rings and more corner brackets for more frames. Pilot drill the barking side frame to install the D-rings and the hanging wire. Pilot drill at the equidistant center, preferably underneath the cloth. If you drill through the cloth, the drill bit might latch on or catch on to the threading. Then subsequently screw down the D-ring with the screw and your drill. So drilling through the cloth isn't necessarily the best way, but if you haven't got any space underneath, just take care when you're drilling through the cloth and the wood. Measure about a quarter of the length of the frame from the top, and from the width or from the sides, an equidistant center. After pilot drilling, screw down the screw onto the D-ring so that it latches onto the frame. Vary the speeds, use 2 to drill and use 1 to screw down. Repeat and reproduce the process for piloting and screwing down the D-rings on all panels. When drilling down, press the knob on the side, and when getting out your drill bit, press the knob on the other side in the opposite direction. Mask your drill bit, you don't need to drill all the way through the wood, okay? You just need a tiny pilot hole. Repeat and reproduce the process. Screw down all D-rings at the back of the acoustic panel. If the screw doesn't go all the way down, torque or hand tighten with the screwdriver. And that may be as a result of the resistance provided by the backing and the cloth, okay? So use a screwdriver to torque tighten, the screw down onto the O-ring and the wood bit. The next step of the process would be to install your hooks and your screws into the wall, using the plug. Use a drill bit that's smaller than the plug that you want to push fit into the wall. Measure up, your wall area so that you know exactly where you want, the acoustic panel to be sat on. With the aid of a masking tape and, varying the speed to 1, drill through the wall. Stopping at the taped area of the drill bit, insert the plug and use a hammer to flush down the plug against the wall. The next bit would be to screw in your screw or your eye hook into the plug that's been inserted in the wall. So if you have got a 6mm plug, pilot drill the hole first and open up the hole to a 5.5mm, okay? So that when you hammer in, your plug into the hole, it's push fit. Get some hanging wire through the D-ring that's been installed at the back of the frame. Run it in loops, a couple of times around, the D-ring. And once you've been able to run some turns around it, twist it around in a ribbon-like fashion. Just make multiple twists around one end of the hanging wire. And once you've been able to achieve a steady connection, you can cut out the excess. Or you could use a plier to crimp, the sharp edges of the hanging wire. Repeat and reproduce the process on the other side, but make sure that there is some slack, when you're coupling, the hanging wire onto the other side of the D-ring. Lift the wire slightly with your hand, to ensure that, there is some slack, as you want, the acoustic panel to breathe, at the back or at the underside. Repeat and reproduce the process for other acoustic panels, and once you've got a steady hanging wire connection at the back of your panels, install the acoustic panel onto the screw that's been inserted or installed in the wall, or onto the eye hooks that's been installed in the plug of the wall. The diameter of your screw or eye hook would necessitate the type of plug that you use, as the colored plugs come in various sizes. Repeat and reproduce the process for your eye hooks. Use a drill bit that's slightly smaller than the eye hook. Pilot drill the hole and open up the hole with a drill bit that you have taped, or open up the hole to the final size, okay? And once you've installed your eye hook, install, the acoustic panel with the hanging wire onto it. Drill as many holes as required. Install, your plugs, and install your hooks or your screws. Make sure the plug is flush, okay, and subsequently hang on your acoustic panel. And what if we decide not to use the cost-effective, breathable bedsheet material that we've used on the acoustic panel? We can, get a staple remover, get the breathable clothing or the bedsheet material and replace it with an acoustic fabric. It's a dampening speaker cloth panel exhibition material. Suffice to say, the acoustic panels are reusable. So if you get tired, of your front cover or your back cloth, you can get it off, okay, and replace it with the same new material or a slightly more expensive material, as we will be doing in this case, where we'd be installing the acoustic fabric dampening speaker cloth back onto the front cover after having removed the material that we've got in the front cover here. So as you can see, taking off the staples there with a staple remover, and taking out the rest of them staples with the aid of a plier, them staples that haven't fully come off the pine wood. Just repeat and reproduce the process for all four corners. Take off all them staples, get the front cover off, and get ready to install the new acoustic fabric dampening speaker cloth. Run the palm of your hands very gently over the pine wood to see if you've got any staples protruding. Okay, don't hurt yourself. Don't pierce your palms. Just your fingers. Just make sure if you find any staples protruding, get a plier and take it out, okay? Because sometimes them heads that are broken are not easily visible to the eyes. And as you can see, after taking off the front cloth or cover, the Rockwool is still sat in place in situ. Make sure it doesn't drop, and get the acoustic speaker cloth and replace it with the obsolete front cover that's been taken off. From here onwards, repeat and reproduce the process for the 7-off panels that have still got the obsolete front covers stuck on them. And once you're done, taking off the front covers from other subsequent panels, lay the panels onto the acoustic fabric speaker cloth and, carry out your measurements just to make sure that you're not wasting, the acoustic fabric. So here I have got a 1 meter by 6 meter anthracite grey acoustic fabric dampening speaker cloth that's been laid down on the ground. 3 inches of the acoustic cloth should be able to get right between the intersection of the inner edge of the pine wood, the backing cloth and the Rockwool. So ensure that 3 inches of the acoustic fabric cloth is evenly distributed, on the side or the length of the acoustic panel, so that when you staple it on, it's not uneven and you do not waste excess cloth. And as you can see, I'm checking to make sure that it's evenly distributed, and I'll repeat and reproduce the process for the other 4 corners and on also on subsequent acoustic panels. So the next step of the process would be to cut 3 inches of acoustic fabric on all corners of the acoustic panel with the aid of a trim scissors. Just trim the fabric bespoke to whatever size of acoustic panel that you've got. Just make sure that it's even on the sides and that it latches properly onto the pine wood, okay? And once we've successfully replicated or repeated and reproduced the process on all 4 sides of the acoustic panel, the next step of the process would be to impress the acoustic fabric onto the sides of the pine wood, okay? Then staple it all through. Like I said previously, it's best to start the staple from the center, then spread out the staples so that you can easily stretch out the acoustic fabric where you need to, and that's because you've given yourself room to start from the center. Once you're done stapling all through the perimeter of the acoustic panel where you've got the acoustic fabric latching onto the pine wood, the next step would be to fold the acoustic fabric on the breadth or the width of the acoustic panel in a square ribbon-like fashion, so that aesthetically it looks quite pleasing. Just make sure that you shoot about 2 or 3 pins at the corner, because the folder makes it more thicker, so it gives it more strength when you apply 2 or more pins at the edges. If you've got a thick acoustic fabric there, you might want to run 2 or 3 more pins at the edges to make it latch properly onto the pine wood. And once you're done installing the staple pins, keep it flush with the aid of a hammer. So just any protruding staple pins, just run it down with the aid of a hammer, So once done, flushing the pins down, repeat and reproduce the process for other panels, and this is what you get, okay? And as you can see on the smaller acoustic panel, I have used 2 pieces of clothing, and that's because I didn't want the acoustic cloth to go to waste. They're quite expensive, so it's not necessary, but you can put Velcro in there, get some super glue, stick it on there, and that should keep the fabric in check. But if the fabric had extended way into the panel, I wouldn't really need velcros there, okay? So it's pretty much up to you. You can use them, you can decide not to use them, okay? The only reason why I have used them is that the excess piece of clothing is close out to the edge as opposed to close out to the midway section of the acoustic panel. And in other cases where I've got the acoustic fabric stretching into the midsection, I've just used some super glue and some Velcro to provide that extra, protection or seal, for the panel so that, it's not flapping or, not coming off. But, it's pretty much up to you. You don't need to do this, okay? I'm just salvaging as much of the acoustic fabric as I can. And that's, what the back of the acoustic panel looks like. Once you're finished, you can see the back clothing of the burlap. You can see that the ribbons, have been, fitted properly. And, this process is pretty much open to improvisation. So if you've got like picture frames, you can use them, or canvases. And if you've got extra bits of Rockwool that are just lying all over the place, you could get strings off your burlap to keep it into position, because you've got chunks there and not the square bit of rock wool. Get the front cover, staple it on, and that's pretty much your acoustic panel sorted. And if we flip the acoustic panels 90 degrees over, you can see that it looks a lot more aesthetically pleasing as opposed to the more cost effective bed sheet. So whatever budget you're working to, you can always work your way around them panels. For the installation of them panels and acoustically treating your room or studio and sealing of your studio, click on the link in the description. And that's about it really. If you found the information useful, don't forget to subscribe, like and share. It does help the channel grow, and hopefully catch up with you later. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.